The winner of the 2026 Australian Open will be... Now, if we were more tech savvy, Steve, this is where the subscribe stuff comes in. You get the hook in, and then subscribe stuff.
We can do that. We can make that work.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that I saw a very. I mean, I'm trying to get better at YouTube here, so
it's 2026.
I'm learning the tricks of the trade, people. Title of this episode is Not Long Now. In fact, what are we? 4 or 5 sleeps from first ball, Steve? Welcome in, by the way.
Thank you. Yes. First ball of the main draw will be 4 days away. Is that right?
Qualifying is going on. I guess. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, as you probably have seen, opening week is happening at the moment at the Australian Open. So it's there's been record crowds and everything in Melbourne. I think before, I have to check the specifics, but I think for day one of qualifying in the past, I think the record crowd was kind of in the 7,000 to 9,000 range, and I think they had around 30,000 for day one this year. But I think many of those maybe didn't quite realize that it was qualifying the way it's been advertised. I think we talked about it on one of the earlier shows. But look, tennis is here. Grand Slam tennis is here, and we're only at the time of recording a day and a half away from the draw taking place.
Yes, I am David E.J. Berger. This is my main man, Steve, Mr. Ace Previews himself. I'm based in California, in Los Angeles specifically. Steve, you are in Melbourne, and this is a genuine question, Steve. The Australian Open is here. The qualifying is taking place. What is the culture like as is it a Melbourneian or as a local on the grounds there? How would you frame the AO as an event for people who actually live in Melbourne?
I think as a Melbourneian, so I've obviously got a slanted view a little bit because I follow the tour year round. There's a high percentage of people in Australia who, January is the tennis season for a lot of people because it is so difficult to follow the tour season round from down here from a coverage perspective. So for a lot of people, they won't really know what has taken place over, the months after last year's Australian Open when Madison Keys, came away with the title and Jannik Sinner. So this week, the crowd starts to build. You start to see things getting busier in the city, and it will hit a peak this weekend into early next week. But yeah, look, it's just nice. Like I feel pretty fortunate to have a Grand Slam, a 30-minute drive away from where I am once a year. So look, it's going to be exciting. I think the crowds and everything are going to be packed. The amount of work they've put into the grounds and giving people options to be at the Australian Open and not necessarily watch tennis have certainly increased. And maybe look, on the next episode, I'll get some info around some of the things that they do have on site. I saw Shake Shack is making its debut in Australia.
Wow. Big news. Big news.
A burger and fries will be about $40 Australian. So looking at the menu. So yeah, look, it's I think we'll try and carve out a solid 10-minute portion of the next episode to talk all things Shake Shack. But yeah, it's an exciting time, and I love this week in terms of qualifying. I think one of my favorite days of the 3-week period of a Grand Slam is the final day of qualifying, where there's so much on the line for these players who are outside the top 100 in terms of being able to earn a spot. You planning on coming down to Melbourne in the years ahead?
Yeah, well, let's go, Steve. We're gonna grow this channel, and yes, I'll tell you what, I am planning to go to San Diego, which is both a WTA and ATP Challenger 100 at the end of this month. So if I was there, if it wasn't such a schlep, I would be there. If tennis is around me, I will go. But yeah, that is the dream one day. I would like to do all 4 slams one year, not pick them off once every 2 years. I think that's my goal one day, is to knock those off. We'll see if that happens. But you mentioned the qualifying, and I think pretty exciting for the people on the grounds there, because I feel like this year in particular, a lot of up and coming stars in that qualifying draw on the men's side and the women's side, including former junior champion Ray Sakamoto, who's kicking off action today, who's taking on Colton Smith. You have the young Norwegian Bukov Kjar out there. It's you have China, who I think a lot of people are excited about, from Italy, and plenty of names abound on the women's side. Steve, who are the exciting names on the women's side?
Look, there's had we recorded yesterday, there's probably a few more interesting ones that had caught my eye from an Australian perspective before they got knocked out. But I think, if you could sum it up with one match that kind of brings about the beauty of qualifying, it's Sloane Stephens versus Olivia Gadecki. So you've got, a former Grand Slam winner, in the twilight of her career, but still grinding away, playing qualifying, didn't get a wild card like Venus Williams and a couple of the others did. So Sloane's there playing second round against Gadecki, who put in some really strong performances last week in Brisbane, pushed Mira Andreeva to 3 sets. So that's probably one that's caught my eye. Another one is Masarova versus Schwalinska. I think is going to be a really interesting match. But yeah, a lot of potential there. And just, talking about that beauty of the up-and-comers versus the veterans, a couple on the men's side as well. Unfortunately, we didn't see Kai Nishikori play. He had to pull out before his first round match. Yeah, but look, you still get a couple of others. Yoshihiro Nishioka was able to win through pretty comfortably in round 1. Someone who I think I've spoken about on this show before, but I do have a soft spot for Bernard Tomic. I think he, was able to get his first win in 5 years, I think it is, at Melbourne Park. Obviously, in the back end of his career, but he's been grinding the last 18 months. He's been playing, all around the world, making quarterfinals, at challenger level pretty consistently. For me as a tennis fan, I really liked seeing him playing round 1 with a full stadium and the stadium getting behind it. Like, I felt like a bit of a full circle moment as an Australian fan, seeing, there's been a bit of a love-hate relationship there over the last 15 years. But for it to come kind of full circle and be back, with a crowd behind him, appreciating what he's doing, and, him trying to grind his way, that was something that really caught my eye yesterday.
Appreciate him leaving his bag of disguises at home as well. Famously came back to a match in disguise, but I see he's left that in the past, which is good. Speaking of the past, let's talk about the past week or so. I mean, we've had a lot of action as this season has started to unfold. We have a couple titleists on the men's side in Daniil Medvedev and Alex Bublik, and we'll start with the men's because with both those guys winning the titles, I feel like, look, there's a lot of talk, Steve, about the big two, and honestly, a lot of, even from us, I feel like we've kind of negged the men's game a little bit in terms of the quality and the parity. That said, I do feel like Daniil Medvedev hot out of the gate. Alex Bublik picked up where he left off. I feel like that second tier below the big two, or the new two as they call them, in Alcaraz and Sinner, are establishing themselves as the clear next tier. Especially when you had, I thought, as someone who has said negative things about the men's game, I thought that was actually awesome to have a final in Hong Kong between Musetti and Bublik. That was something to look forward to. I was pretty pumped up for that final. This is a 250 right before a slam. It's a chance. It could go both ways. It could be a real dud of a final between two randos that just stumbled their way into a watered down draw and they made the final, and good on those players for doing so. But the marketability for the men's game maybe not so great. But here you had two of the higher end players, and and Musetti, the Italian, and Bublik squaring off, and I thought they both turned in pretty good performances in that final as well. And then Daniil Medvedev, we'll see what we get from him for the rest of the season, but I do think he sent out a warning shot that he's not quite done yet.
Yeah, and I think it's been a while since I have been this, I don't know necessarily if excited is the right word, but interested to see from the Australian Open what we get through that kind of fourth round, quarterfinal, semi-final period. I think the last couple of years it's kind of been, oh, well, who's Sinner and Alcaraz? Like, who are they facing and who are they going to win, beat in 3, maybe 4 sets if they, have a small lapse. But yeah, there's these players now who are establishing themselves. I mean, I think we talked about Bublik a couple of episodes ago. He was playing a challenger in March last year and on the brink of falling out of the top 100, and now he's a top 10 player. Things can change pretty quickly for these players once they can get on a little bit of a roll. But I think, the thing with Bublik has been his application week in, week out for the most part has improved significantly. So instead of going, deep into a tournament and then losing 3 first or second rounds in a row, he's establishing himself as a player who, and the benefit to his game is that the more he plays, the more he does get into a rhythm, I think, as well. And I think he's figured out that winning is fun, far more enjoyable than turning up somewhere and losing, first or second round to someone you're expected to beat. So yeah, I think I agree with you in terms of that next tier. For a lot of the last period of time, it has kind of been the top 2, and then Zverev's just kind of floated there, but hasn't really threatened at Grand Slam level. And then we've had the rest. I think they are all coming back a little bit. The field's coming back together a little bit, which is great. And yeah, Medvedev, probably a great example of what a coaching change can do. There's a lot of negatives around Carlos and Juan Carlos Ferrero, coming apart, but who knows who might come into that team and add a little bit, to the Spaniards' game. Like we said with Medvedev, some of the backhands in particular he played and the aggression with some of his game in Brisbane was really impressive, and a breath of fresh air compared to what we saw from him last year, where he admitted this, I think, in one of his interviews. He just got really angry really quickly last year, and his games would go off the rails. But what I liked with his final with Nakashima was I think he served for the match, got broken, but then responded straight away and won a pretty dominant tiebreak. So it's I'm excited to see where he can take his game back to, I think, in 2026.
Did well behind his first serve last week. Won a lot of first serve points.
Yeah.
I mentioned the next tier, and a guy I think who would maybe consider himself in that next tier, but we haven't seen him for a while. And he doesn't really have the recent results to really be considered there, but he did return to the tour, and that's Hubi Hurkacz, who had a splendid United Cup, leading Poland to the title with Iga Swiatek. And, he gets that win against Zverev right out of the gate. I said on the Match Point 9 show when we were previewing the United Cup, Zverev's a box of chocolates, so you never know what you're going to get. So I thought Hubi, if he wasn't physically impacted, I thought he could have a successful return as a guy who is very, obviously serve dependent, and it's just so potent, and that took him far in that match. And he played a really competitive match against Alex de Minaur, who I think he would put in that second tier. So I think Hubi Hurkacz, a healthy Hubi Hurkacz, we've seen him have AO runs in the past, and I think he's a name that even a few weeks ago no one was really considering down here, and I think he's reinserted himself into the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. He's gone from a name that no one was really considering to a name that no one wants next to them in the draw, I think, as an unseeded player here. I think what else came really clear, I think, with Hubi last week is that while he was away from the tour, he didn't miss a gym day. I think we certainly saw a strong and conditioned return. He's obviously taken the time, to get himself right and come back and not have to find himself, in and out of the physio room working on an injury. So look, it's exciting to see him back. As he said, with his serve and stuff, he is able to be able to match it with some of the top players. So interested to see where he goes. And I guess the big question mark now is he's come back. But how is he going to look over best of 5 at the Grand Slam stage as well?
Some familiar names won titles on the women's side. Aryna Sabalenka took down Brisbane, and Elina Svitolina won Auckland. And 2 campaigns, I thought, I watched a little bit of both players during the week, and I thought, they were in fine form, no off-season rust. Not that tennis has a long off-season, but certainly they played well the entire week. And it was it was a great tournament for both players.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great to see Sabalenka respond really well after a loss to Nick Kyrgios. I think that's something we really need to
A heartbreaking loss.
to make a note of. It was a heartbreaking loss, and it was a close loss. But no, it is that thing of you've got the first couple of weeks before the Australian Open. Sabalenka's going to win a title somewhere in some way, shape, or form in that kind of pocket of the draw. So she was able to do what she needed to do. And yeah, Svitolina just under the radar, I think, a little bit in terms of thinking about the Australian Open this week and where she could potentially fall. She's going to be a tough opponent for anyone in that draw. Last year, I think she was on top of Madison Keys in their match, in week 2 of the Australian Open in terms of being able to push the American. So I think Svitolina's game is one of those kind of measuring stick games where if you're beating her, you're looking pretty good in terms of your prospects, I think, for the tournament. So curious to see how Svitolina goes at the Australian Open next week.
I think the biggest story in Auckland was Alex Eala, just in terms of, I mean, she is a star. I mean, the crowds for her are loud and impactful on a match. And, I did a reel where I mentioned, these athletes, they become brands as they get bigger and bigger. And I feel like if she can get the results on the WTA Tour to, continue, like you have to have the results to get to that level. So if she can keep winning, I think this woman has a strong future corporate life ahead.
Yeah, we did a couple of reels on our YouTube account around Alex, and I think one of the comments was around she's got a game that is enjoyable to watch, and in terms of her personality, how she carries herself on and off the court, and just how she is bringing a part of the world to the top level of tennis that we haven't seen on the same level as an Australia who's not too far away, or some of the other Asian countries. It's been really great to see. I think it's one of those players who is able to kind of push the game further in terms of globalizing. I think back to when Nishikori made the US Open final, and then how he was then perceived and how that did grow the game, I think, a little bit in Japan. And then Naomi Osaka came along as well. These players who can kind of continue to globalize and build the global brand of women's tennis. I think women's tennis is in a significantly better spot than it was kind of 4 years ago when it was, or a couple of years ago when Ash Barty had retired and it was just kind of eager, and then the rest. I think we've seen a real leveling out, I think, at the top in terms of everyone being able to beat everyone. And I think Alex Eala is going to be someone who can continue to push that global brand that the WTA is looking for.
The tournament we haven't really talked about yet was the United Cup. Poland did win. I mentioned that, but I think that the team from Switzerland made the most waves. I thought Belinda Bencic definitely announced herself as a player that we talked about, Hubi not wanting to see his name in the draw. You do not want to play Belinda Bencic right now, especially when she switches rackets uh, at the end of a match. I think she won. She made that racket switch and won like 10 straight points. It was crazy. But her play was great. I also want to give a shout out to Team Belgium. They were awesome. They were right there. They were long shots, and they were in the semifinals. They were in, Mertens was in a breaker with Bencic right there. Could have been in the semifinals just as easily as Switzerland. The Swiss come out on top, and part of that was because of Stan Wawrinka, who got himself an AO wild card as we, turn our eyes ahead to the AO once again. That was a lot of debate. I think we even put out who could potentially get one of these remaining wild cards, and Stan wins out, and rightfully so. I think he got snubbed at the U.S. Open, and there was some controversy about that. But on the heels of his play at the United Cup, I think is what solidified his inbox getting filled.
Yeah, it was nice to see him back at that kind of competitive top level. And yeah, look, it was a lot of the conversation for the first week or so of the tour was who was getting those wild cards, and I think there were 3 remaining that they hadn't quite put out there. And it was it Chris O'Connell, Jordan Thompson, Stan Wawrinka. Interestingly timed release from Nick Kyrgios saying that he was going to focus on the doubles. So we weren't in the room. No one will probably ever really know if he was actually offered one or not, and he did graciously decline it. It's probably the right call, I think, in terms of what we've seen. And I think Stan forced the issue, I think, a little bit with his United Cup play. Agree with you about Team Belgium. I think they were probably the surprise packet to an extent. I think Bergs in particular, played some great singles matches. Mertens was incredibly solid. Her ability to play across singles and doubles means that she's going to be a great asset for any of these mixed team events. But yeah, I think Belinda Bencic was a well-deserved MVP. I think, she was it 9-1 for the week, with that last doubles being the one where she just couldn't get over the line. But, some solid wins, defeating Mertens in a 3rd set breaker. The way that she played the 2nd and 3rd sets against Iga Swiatek was incredible. Yeah, it was a phenomenal week for Bencic across the singles and doubles.
Steve, we talked about a lot of up-and-coming stars in the qualifying draw of the Australian Open. Someone who's not in the qualifying draw, but an up-and-coming star is João Fonseca. And, he has been on site in Brisbane and Adelaide, but 2-time withdrawal champ so far. Where are we at with him ahead of this? I feel like two ways about it. One, he could be setting himself up for success in terms of saving it all for here for a big push. But I also feel like maybe we might be disappointed in his campaign here in Melbourne.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. We'll probably know pretty quickly in terms of round 1 as to how he is looking. From all reports, he's close in terms of what he's doing, and it sounds like it's probably the smart long-term call to be pulling out of these tournaments. But yeah, I think we probably just need to put an asterisk next to his name, I think, when we're talking Australian Open, because someone his age coming in off no lead-up tennis, needing to play best of 5, it becomes a bit of a tough ask. What we've seen in terms of his potential and his level, he's certainly up to it. It's just a matter of, I think, probably whether the draw allows him to kind of build up a base. I think we want to see him playing consistently. I think you'd agree that draws with himself and Jack Draper fully fit make for far more interesting draws in terms of who's been able to match it with those top players. So I like that he's taking a conservative approach. I think it probably means that it does harm his chances for this fortnight, but really excited to see where he finishes the year and how many tournaments he can, make an impression on and even win.
He's a guy I think we expect to be in that second tier, but I think also a player that has more of the future or less evidence that he's not going to break into that new two than the other guys in that second tier. I think he has a ceiling we haven't seen yet, and I think the hope is he could make it a new big three eventually. Obviously, that's a lot of expectation. Who knows if he can fulfill that? But I do feel like the potential is there. Versus not that Bublik can't get up there, but we have seen him beat down pretty hard by center a couple times. So as great as that second tier and the solidification of those guys and providing other opportunities for excitement on the calendar besides when we wait around for Sinner and Alcaraz to play again. You're looking for a Fonseca. You're looking for someone with a little less on tape to maybe exceed expectations and push through that second tier into that first tier.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, as we said before, I think it's in a good place. I don't think it's quite as even at the top as the women's game at the moment, but yeah, we need players like himself and players like Draper to be able to kind of continue to force the issue because yes, as you said, players like Bublik probably do have a little bit of scarring from some of the recent losses. Whereas I don't think you quite have that as much yet with the likes of Draper and Fonseca.
Definitely not. And man, Draper Feast is out too now. I feel like there's some names missing on the men's side that are pretty sad. Draper, Feast. I would love to see them in the mix here.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We will find a point this year where everyone is back and firing at the same time. It's just a matter of hoping that we don't have any other soldiers fall along the way as well. Holger Rune's months away.
Oh, he's gone too. Yeah, I knew there was another one was missing.
Yeah, so there's obviously a few there, but yeah, I think when you think and you list off all those players and names, put them all in a draw somewhere, and it's going to make for some really interesting viewing.
Absolutely. What are you looking forward to the most in terms of the Australian Open? Obviously, we're going to do a pretty big AO show coming up, so I think maybe we wrap this little. We wanted to get back on the mic, get out there, and get some content out there. It's been so long. But with the action heating up in Melbourne, maybe we wrap it up with some just things we're excited for in the coming days. Steve, what are you looking forward to the most?
Look, it's probably a bit of a boring answer, but I'm just looking forward to Grand Slam main draw tennis. It's been a long time since the US Open. It's nice to just have that back, that high stakes level that comes with it. I want to see a couple of the top players tested in rounds 1 and 2. As I said, with our next show, I'm excited to see where some of these men's players who are outside the seedings, where they fall. Like we said with Hubi before, who's getting a scary round 1. Like we could be sitting here with a Hurkacz versus Sinner round 1 in a couple of days. Like there's the potential for a lot of matches that could really kind of throw the whole draw off in some way, shape, or form. So I think that's probably the thing. Grand Slam tennis just feels that it's a step above everything else, and it's been a long time since August since we last were able to watch a Grand Slam. How about you?
Well, one, I have to get into Australian Open tennis viewing shape. I managed to make it up to midnight my time, which at that point would be about 7 or 8 hours into it. But obviously, it's going to go well into the night. So before I usually was cutting myself off about 1 to 2 a.m. That's usually my cutoff, so I can be somewhat of a human the next morning. But I'm not quite there yet. So I am looking forward. I'm looking forward to the late night action, my time, and I'm looking forward to who's going to emerge as a name to talk about. I feel I mentioned the second tier, and it was nice to be excited to talk about those guys again because I feel like we got a lot of turnover on the men's side. The women's side, I feel like, is a lot more interesting in terms of a variety of names you can discuss and go over. But it'll be nice to provide, or it'll be nice for this slam to provide an opportunity for someone to rise up and add to the conversation. I think it's a draw that's going to be wide open for someone to emerge and be a story, and even a qualifier. I feel like could do something. So I'm looking forward to the news stories that are going to be written by players on the come up, because I do feel like there's a shifting in the ATP Top 100 that's going to provide opportunities for players to take advantage. And for us as content creators, it'll be nice to have some fresh storylines to go over.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here. We're nearly here. It's on our doorstep.
It is on our doorstep. And I did do the tease of who will win. Are you sticking with Yannick Sinner right now?
Oh, look, I'll make it a little bit more interesting. I'll go with Carlos Alcaraz.
I'm going to go Alcaraz as well. You know what? I think a lot of people will be down on him because of the team change and everything. I honestly think that matters. Don't get me wrong. But he's just too good. Like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
And look, we talked about it on the show just after the news was announced, but surely Juan Carlos Ferrero didn't leave any tricks in the bag after all these years. Like, surely a lot of the teaching has been done, and a lot of the learning has come from that already. Without opening up a can of worms and extending this episode out any longer, I feel like it's my take with Sinner versus Alcaraz is that I think Alcaraz has the edge over Sinner in best of 5 on hard court. I think I'd probably give Sinner the edge slightly in best of 3, but I think Carlos has it over best of 5. Whether or not it's the Roland Garros scars that come back for Yannick or what it is, but I think that US Open final in particular was probably another example of, I just feel like Carlos has the edge if a match goes 3 hours plus between the two of them.
I mean, bosom buddies, these guys, not exactly a heated rivalry as people are talking about that show a bunch. These guys are like best buds, it seems like. Obviously on the court, things will be different, but I feel like pretty cool for fans as they're walking around. You see one, you see the other the last couple of weeks. So that's pretty exciting. And the weight of I think the weight of the sport is on their shoulders, at least on the men's side. People want that final. We'll see if we get it. A long way to go. If you've made it here and you like this conversation, we're going to be having more of them all calendar long. Do hit that subscribe button. Until next time, see you in the court.